Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. The Super Nintendo was more than a 16-bit console, it was a playground for artistic innovation. Developers didn't just use the SNES to make great games, they pushed it to its absolute limits and redefined what players thought was possible. From breathtaking sprite work to 3D illusions, these games stunned audiences and continue to amaze to this day. In this video, we're diving deep into 7 SNES games whose graphics pushed the hardware to the absolute limit. These weren't just pretty games, they were technical marvels that stretched every byte of cartridge memory and redefined visual expectations of 2D consoles. Now, before we go into this list, if you really think I deserve it, please hit that like and subscribe button, it really helps the channel grow. We also have a weekly podcast where this week we're looking at Star Fox 2, and we've also got a $1 a month Patreon where you can join the Smut Squad and get your own show. Right, let's get into it, shall we? 7 games that pushed the Super Nintendo to its limit. Seiken Densetsu 3. Seiken Densetsu 3, known today as Trials of Mana, was released in 1995 exclusively in Japan. As a follow-up to Secret of Mana, it carried immense expectation, but few anticipated just how far Square would push the SNES hardware with this game. While it took decades for Western audiences to finally experience it officially, fans who'd played it via fan translations were stunned by its scale and beauty. The story follows 6 distinct characters, and you choose 3 of them to form your party. Each combination alters the plot, interactions, and the final boss. This added narrative complexity and allowed the world to feel more alive and dynamic. With different kingdoms, political schemes, and divine powers at play, the branching narrative was already ahead of its time, but the visuals brought this world to life in a way that rivaled early PlayStation RPGs. Gameplay remains real-time like its predecessor, but introduces deeper customization. Each character can evolve into one of 4 advanced classes based on their alignment, light or dark. These class changes not only affect gameplay mechanics, but also give characters a fresh visual redesign. Spell animations become increasingly elaborate as your characters grow stronger, filling the screen with lightning bolts, flame dragons, and cascading meteors. Graphically, Trials of Mana utilizes enormous expressive sprites. Each environment is fantastically detailed, from lush forests and ancient ruins to icy mountain passes and glowing moonlit castles. The use of the colour palette is particularly striking. Greens feel vibrant, shadows look layered, and the particle effects give almost a magical sheen to every interaction. The lighting and atmospheric touches in this game are incredible. A day-night cycle dynamically alters lighting in towns and fields. Stars twinkle in nighttime sequences, lanterns flicker, and shadows stretch or contract with the sun's position. This lighting system made towns feel lived in and added depth to the field exploration. The animation work here deserves special praise. Character movements, idle animations, and attacks are fluid, detailed, and distinct between classes. Enemies are also well animated, often with multi-phase transformations or attack patterns that require the SNES to handle multiple animated layers simultaneously without severe slowdown. It's also a triumph of memory management. Developers use compression techniques and bank switching to allow the game's massive world, complex code, and advanced visual to exist on a single cartridge. This game really was a feat of engineering and art. Critically, the game was lauded in Japan as one of the finest examples of what the SNES could do. While it didn't officially release outside Japan until 2019, fan translations spread its legend. Its reputation grew as a cult classic, considered not just one of the best SNES games, but one of the most ambitious RPGs ever created. Even today, Secret of Mana 2 stands tall as a testament to what developers could achieve with deep knowledge of the SNES architecture, imaginative art design, and sheer determination. It's not just beautiful, it's groundbreaking. Yoshis Island. When Yoshis Island dropped in 1995, it stood in stark contrast to Nintendo's other major graphical success, Donkey Kong Country. Instead of chasing realism with pre-rendered sprites, Nintendo embraced a hand-drawn storybook aesthetic that gave Yoshi's Island a unique identity, and more importantly, it showcased technical innovation hiding under a childlike exterior. The story follows baby Mario, who's separated from his brother Luigi and carried across a magical island by a team of Yoshis. The concept is whimsical and the characters are playful, and yet the technology behind the game is anything but simple. Nintendo used the Super FX2 chip, a power enhancement chip embedded in the cartridge, to allow for sprite manipulation, scaling and rotation, enabling effects no stock SNES hardware could perform alone. Yoshi can flutter jump, swallow enemies, create eggs, and then aim them in an arc to hit distant switches or enemies. The game constantly introduces new mechanics, dealing with new enemy types or navigating environmental puzzles, all of which are enhanced by the visual presentation. Graphically, Yoshi's Island is stunning. It looks like a pastel crayon drawing brought to life. But beneath the storybook look is a powerhouse of effects. Backgrounds swirl, warp, scale, and dissolve in real time. Bosses grow to monstrous proportions using sprite scaling, environments collapse with rotating debris, and lava bubbles pulse using distortion. The boss fights are where the Super FX2 chip shines brightest. Baby Bowser's final transformation sequence is a showcase moment. He grows in the background using scaling and rotation, slowly advancing towards the screen as you fight in real time. It's one of the most iconic finales in SNES history. Despite the colourful visuals, the game uses subtle transparency effects, fogged overlays, and parallax scrolling to add depth. Water shimmers with multi-layer transparency, clouds scroll at different speeds, and forests flicker with filtered lighting. These are features typically associated with 32-bit consoles, yet here they are, on a humble 16-bit system. Critics praise Yoshis Island not for its gameplay, but for how bold its visual direction was. Some initial skepticism about its childlike art was quickly replaced with admiration for its technical achievements. It won multiple awards and has often been cited as one of the best looking 2D games of all time. What sets Yoshi's Island apart from that crying little bastard, is that it's visually expressive in a way few games are. Its aesthetic is both timeless and technically impressive. Few SNES games blend art direction and graphical muscle so seamlessly. Even today, Yoshi's Island is studied for its animation quality, use of scaling effects, and brilliant design. It wasn't just how good the game actually looked, it was about how good it looked in a completely different way than anything else on the market. Star Fox. Star Fox released in 1993 and was a game unlike anything else on the Super Nintendo. It was Nintendo's bold leap into the world of 3D polygonal graphics, and it required the invention of an entirely new chip, the Super FX, to pull it off. What emerged was a space shooter that not only felt futuristic in gameplay, but also in presentation. It's the first game many players remember that made them say, "This doesn't look like an SNES game." The story is quite simple and cinematic. The evil Andros has launched an assault on the Lilac system, and it's up to the Star Fox team of Fox McCloud, Folky Lombardi, Peppy Hare, and Slippy Toad to stop him. Sorry, I just couldn't resist doing that. I love the I love all that. I can laugh myself. Such a child. The game's narrative is driven through mission briefings, radio chatter, and boss encounters, all of which unfold mid-mission to give an episodic TV show feel. The gameplay is an on-rail shooter, where the player guides the R-Wing through asteroid belts, enemy fleets, and planetary bases. You do fly automatically, but you can move within the screen's field to dodge projectiles, aim at enemies, and navigate hazards. The controls are surprising responses given the hardware limitations, and the perspective creates a real sense of depth. The real marvel here is the visuals. Star Fox was the first console to feature real-time 3D graphics using polygons, rendered entirely on the SNES. No sprites, just raw shapes forming spaceships, robots, gates, and terrain. The Super FX chip handled all the calculations, freeing the SNES CPU to handle the game logic and audio. Though the graphics do seem very primitive today, back in 1993 they blew our bloody cocks off. Players had never seen real-time 3D graphics on a home console. The clean wireframes and solid shaded polygons created environments that felt massive and dynamic. Structures rotated in space, tunnels twisted in perspective, and bosses exploded into jagged fragments. The environments featured layered backgrounds, planet textures, and scaling effects to simulate distance and speed. When flying over planet's surface or diving into canyons, the sense of immersion was unmatched by any other SNES title. The SNES was never designed for 3D, yet here it was, delivering a taste of the future. The audio-visual synergy also contributed to the spectacle. The soundtrack, with its militaristic brass and ominous synths, paired perfectly with the cold, angular visuals. Sound effects like laser blasts and enemy lock-ons emphasized the game's high-tech theme, completing the immersion. Critically, Star Fox was a sensation. Reviewers praised its ambition and originality. Even those who found the visuals rough acknowledged the massive leap forward it represented. It won numerous awards and kickstarted a franchise that would later flourish on the N64, and then just seemed to die. My god, make more Lilac Wars. Freaking love that game. Star Fox didn't just push the SNES, it redefines what players believed the system was capable of. It was the first proof of concept that 3D gaming wasn't just a pipe dream for the future. After all, it started with daring experiments inside a grey little plastic cartridge. Street Fighter Alpha 2. Capcom's Street Fighter Alpha 2 was released for the SNES in 1996, 2 years after its original arcade debut, and well into the twilight of the Super Nintendo's lifecycle. By then, most fans had assumed the conversions of cutting-edge 2D arcade games were beyond the SNES ability, and to some extent, they were kinda right. Street Fighter Alpha 2 on the SNES is a miracle of programming, a game that had no business running on 16-bit hardware, yet here we are, and it somehow did. The game continues Street Fighter Alpha storyline set between the events of Street Fighter 1 and Street Fighter 2. It features a cast of returning veterans like Ryu and Chun-Li, but also introduces my favourite Sakura, not Rose, and not Gen. Well, they are in it, they're just not my favourites. The storytelling is conveyed through pre-fight and post-fight dialogue, as well as ending cinematics for each character. Gameplay follows the typical alpha formula, which is more fluid and more combo orientated than the classic Street Fighter II. The SNES version retains the alpha counter system, multi-tiered super combos, and intricate combo mechanics. Miraculously, this all works with the SNES controller, even though players had to adjust to having 4 base buttons unless they owned a 6-button pad. What stunned fans was how Capcom managed to preserve the arcade's graphic style and animation frames, despite the SNES lacking the memory, processing power, and storage of the original CPS2 arcade board. They used a special compression system and custom chip to reduce sprite sizes and data while keeping character detail impressively intact. The sprite work here is phenomenal. Characters are colourful, expressive, and incredibly detailed for an SNES game. Whilst animation frames were slightly reduced compared to the arcade and PlayStation version, the SNES still manages smooth and responsive movements. Special attacks like Ryu Hadouken and Ken Shoryuken feature beautiful particle trails and impactful hit effects. The backgrounds are among the most impressive ever seen on the SNES. Whether it's the rain-drenched temple in Gen stage or the fiery background of Roman Reigns' Akuma's lair, the background pulls with colour and life. Some feature real-time parallax scrolling, light transparency effects, and dynamic elements like flickering fire or waving cloth. The biggest technical hurdle was storage. The biggest technical hurdle here was the storage. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is one of the largest SNES cartridges ever made, utilising a 32 megabit ROM with heavy compression. Despite this, it manages to include a full character roster, animated intros, super moves, and most background stages from the arcade. Of course, there were compromises. Some sound samples were compromised, loading screens were inserted between matches, unusual for SNES games. Yeah, the loading screens were a pain in the arse, but, you've got to be a trade-off somewhere. And there were frame drops occasionally during intense action. But the fact this even worked at all is a triumph. Reviewers at the time called it a miracle port, and critics recognised it was not arcade perfect, but acknowledged its incredible technical ambition. Today, although Street Fighter Alpha 2 on the SNES is remembered less as a definitive version, and more of just a monument to what brilliant programming and optimization could achieve on an aging 16-bit hardware. This was more than just a fighting game, it was a final technical flex from Capcom and a stunning farewell to the SNES era. Gundam Wing Endless Duel. If there's one game that consistently surprises SNES fans with just how good it looks and plays, it's Gundam Wing Endless Duel. Released in 1996 exclusively in Japan by Natsume and Bandai, this late-generation SNES title delivers fluid animation, detailed character sprites, and explosive effects that rival 32-bit fighters on more powerful hardware. Based on the anime Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, the game features iconic mobile suits from the show such as Wing Gundam, Death Scythe, Heavy Arms, and others, each faithfully recreated with astonishing attention to detail. The storyline, if there is one, was basically just mechas fighting, that's all you need to know. Gameplay-wise, Endless Duel plays like a traditional 1v1 fighting game, similar to Street Fighter 2 or Guilty Gear. Each mobile suit, and I'm very clear not to say Gundam there because there are other mobile suits that aren't Gundam in here. Yes, I know my lore. I love my Gundam, so yes, I know. Each one has a unique moveset, combos, special attacks, and screen-shaking supers that feel satisfying to execute. Now what sets the gameplay apart is how responsive and weighty it feels. Each mobile suit has proper heft, yet the controls are tight and precise. The real star here is the graphics engine. Character sprites are huge, among the biggest on the SNES, and exquisitely animated. Every mobile suit has multiple attacks, animations, guard stances, knockback states, and special move sequences. The developers really pushed the sprite memory limits to deliver incredibly fluid combat. Special moves are where the SNES flexed its muscles. Explosions used layered transparency and scaling effects. Laser blasts shimmer and reflect, creating vibrant light trails across the screen. Missile attacks leave behind clouds of smoke and sparks. It's not just flashy, it's cinematic. The stages are equally impressive. Each arena is based on locations from the anime, such as space colonies, desert battlefield, or ruined cities. They feature multi-layered parallax scrolling, animated elements like glowing thrusters, and flickering computer terminals, and lighting effects that change depending on the environment. The game even implements a pseudo-depth of field effect, making background layers blur slightly compared to the foreground. This subtle touch gives stages a surprising sense of 3D space despite the 2D presentation. Combined with the music and voice samples, it all results in an audio-visual experience that feels well ahead of its time. Technically, Endless Duel is one of the most polished and optimized SNES games ever made. It runs smoothly with almost no slowdown, even during intense exchanges with multiple projectiles on screen. It proves that with the right techniques and late-gen expertise, developers could wring astonishing performances from the SNES. Although it never saw an official Western release, importers and fans of the anime quickly spread word about the game's quality. Over the years, it's developed a cult following as one of the best anime fighters on any 16-bit console, and emulators and fan translations have only boosted its reach. Gundam Wing Endless Duel stands as a hidden gem and jaw-dropping technical showcase. It's a reminder that even though when the NES was near the end of its lifespan, there were still new graphical heights waiting to be reached. Tales of Fantasia. Before it launched an entire franchise, Tales of Fantasia made its debut on the Super Famicom in 1995. Developed by Wolf Team and published by Namco, it stood out as one of the most advanced RPGs ever released on the system. While it never got that official release on the SNES, it built a massive following through translations thanks in part to its jaw-dropping presentation and technical mastery. The story begins with a small band of adventurers fighting an evil sorcerer. The twist? Well, after defeating him, he escapes through time, prompting the heroes to follow him across different eras. The game's time-traveling narrative provides the perfect backdrop for varied environments, ranging from medieval towns to futuristic ruins. Now, what sets Tales of Fantasia apart, aside from its narrative, was its revolutionary combat system. Instead of traditional turn-based battles, the game features side-scrolling, real-time combat system dubbed the Linear Motion Battle System. This allowed players to run, jump, and perform combos, all with responsive controls and animation that put other RPGs to shame. Graphically, Tales of Fantasia is nothing short of spectacular. Characters are richly animated, magic spells explode with multicolored effects, and the environments are lush with detail. Whether exploring a sleepy forest village or a floating fortress, the game's use of colour and light create an immersive, vivid world. One of its most groundbreaking features was the use of voice samples, a rarity on the SNES. Characters shouted their attack names, sang theme songs, and spoke lines during battle. This was made possible through compression and careful sound channel allocation, squeezing what seemed impossible into the cartridge format. The spell animations were some of the most stunning ever seen on the SNES. High-level magic summons engulf the screen in light, flames, wind, or electricity, each designed with intricate layering, sprite scaling, and transparency effects. These were moments that would make your jaw drop, or your dick pop off, whichever came first, especially considering the system's limited hardware. Backgrounds were also showcased impressive parallax scrolling and ambient effects. In one cave, the background pulsates like it's alive. In another, you'll see the water reflecting light in real time. Every setting here feels tailored to its narrative moment, enriching both the atmosphere and the storytelling. Fantasia was also one of the largest SNES cartridges ever produced at 48 megabits. It needed the extra space for its expanded script, detailed sprite work, and digital audio. The developers had to use a special compression technique to fit in the game's robust features without sacrificing performance. Despite its Japan-only release, the game garnered critical acclaim and fan admiration. Over time, it was re-released on several platforms, including the PlayStation and Game Boy Advance, but the SNES original remains a marvel. Fans still praise it not just for being a fantastic RPG, but pushing the SNES beyond what many thought was possible. Tales of Fantasia wasn't just the start of a beloved series, it was a bold, beautiful swan song for the SNES's golden age of RPGs. And finally, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Released in 1996, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars was a groundbreaking collaboration between Nintendo and Square. Not only was it Mario's first foray into the role-playing genre, but it also pushed the Super Nintendo to its absolute technical limit. This is one of the final major releases for the console, and it went out with a graphical bang. The game's story sees Mario, Bowser, and Peach and a new cast of characters uniting to take down Smithy, a mechanical menace who disrupts the Star Road and shatters the wishes of the world. What starts as a traditional rescue mission for Princess Peach quickly becomes a grand adventure filled with humour, my god Bowser's hilarious in this game, heart, and cinematic flair. The gameplay blends turn-based combat with action elements, timed hits, defensive blocks, and flashy super moves that make battles feel interactive and kinetic, but it's the world design and presentation that elevate the experience to legendary status. Super Mario RPG uses an isometric pre-rendered 3D art style that was rarely attempted on the SNES. Character models and environments were first rendered on high-end workstations, then compressed into 2D sprites and tiles. The result is a 3D look that isn't like anything else on the console, vibrant, colourful, and full of depth. Mario and his companions are rendered as smooth, rounded figures with subtle shading and expressive animation. Despite the limitations of 2D, the developers simulate lighting effects, motion blur, and pseudo 3D rotation, all running on a base SNES system with no enhancement chip, which is bloody impressive. The environments are just as impressive. Each area feels distinct and visually rich, from the crystalline shimmer of Star Hill to the molten depths of Barrel Volcano. The perspective creates the illusion of real depth, enhanced by detailed texture work, smooth tile transitions, and animated environmental features. Special effects also shine throughout the game. Spells and special attacks burst with colour and layered animation. The game often uses screen warping, explosion effects, and sprite scaling during battle. Bosses like Culex and Smithy feature transformations that push the hardware's sprite layering and memory management to the brink. The game's size and scope requires careful optimization. With no enhancement chip, the development team relied on compression and data streaming to pack in extensive animations, audio, and world maps. The soundtrack is equally legendary, offering some of the richest and most memorable compositions on the system, all synchronized with action and events. Critics and players were amazed by the game's visuals. At the time, many believed this must have been running on advanced hardware, yet it was all done on a standard SNES. It received glowing reviews for its graphical innovation, charming story and gameplay depth. It became an instant classic and maintained a devoted following for decades. Super Mario RPG wasn't just a technical marvel, it was a love letter to fans of both Nintendo and Square, and a bold vision of what could have achieved when two titans of gaming development joined forces and actually were friends. Its legacy does still live on though, in Paper Mario and the Mario & Luigi series, but visually, this SNES classic still turns heads to this day. And that's it! 7 games which I think were technical marvels for the Super Nintendo. Do you think there's ones I've missed? If so, put them in the comments below, and also give me your thoughts and history of playing on these games. Until then, if you like this video and think I deserve it, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you all again in 3 days for another video. My name's been Daddy, take care of yourself, bye bye.